Good afternoon, US. Good evening, UK. And I hope everyone's well. And tonight I am speaking to Russell Stephen Edwards. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so pleased to meet you. You did an amazing presentation at Sage Paracon
Thank
in
you.
July, and it was everybody knows about Jack the Ripper, but I've heard about it, but I didn't know much detail about it. But you've kind of made it a life's work, haven't you, to look
Yeah,
into it and find out who Jack the Ripper was. So,
yeah.
where did it first start with you then?
You know what? I'd been in the East End. I first went down there in 1989, and a friend of mine took me to the bagel shop, which is still there. And it's quite run down, and it certainly was then. It's more trendy nowadays. However, what I loved about it was there's a certain vibe that, at night time, there really is a chill. There really is something that you're feeling. But of
Wow.
course, being from Merseyside, I love curry. So it was
Oh,
all
dear.
houses. So back then, you know what, we were poor students and you could get a curry, and you used to have corkage down there. So you take your own
Oh,
ale,
yeah, I do that. Yeah.
a pound for whatever you take in. It's brilliant. So as poor students, we could have a night out in Brick Lane, which we did all the time. And, 10, 15 quid. So that's the original introduction, my introduction to Brick Lane. And then because I love it so much, and a part of my soul feels like it's there, was when I had the software company in the 90s after university, all the corporate clients from around the world, they'd come and do work in the day. And I'd say, what are you doing in the evening? And I used to be the entertaining guy. So I'd go out and I'd take him, show them the sights and sounds of London. And I'd take him to the East End and they would love it. And it was really a big thing. And it
Wow.
wasn't until From Hell, that was the pivotal moment when I first saw the film From Hell. And and I'd heard of Jack the Ripper, but not really. It wasn't as if it was of interest to me because I am still a businessman.
Yeah.
So it was a case of going on a tour, which I did. I think it was the very next day, and my then wife was really not interested. So when I'm hearing about this, really, I think there's a good word here that I'd like to put in: escapism. So it's
Right.
you step back into a different world of reality, and you escape from this modern world, and you get
Yeah.
drawn into the Victorian era, and then even more than that, it's this murder mystery that
Yeah.
no solved. And I thought, oh,
Massive one.
that's how come I've been here 11 years and I didn't know? Then all of a sudden, I really do want to know. So literally, I saw the film From Hell on a Friday, and I was calling Scotland Yard on the Monday and asking, was it really real? You know,
Oh my gosh.
this is how I am
Wow.
direct. So, rather than beating about the bush, and I really wanted to know. So I got told all the case records were down at the archives at Kew, which is where I went to on the Tuesday. And lo and behold, I'm now going through the microfiches and holding so the victims' pictures back then. You had to go into a dust-free room. You had to have white gloves on. So you don't get anything on the photographs. And I'm holding photographs of the victims, and lo and behold, the big one was Elizabeth Stride, the third murder victim. And that really, there's one thing reading a book, there's one thing seeing a film, but it's also when you really realize this is not a fake story, this is real or genuine.
Yeah.
That's when it hits home. So, like most people that ever get interested in or intrigued in this story, I thought, you know what, I'll have a delve and see if I could have a go at solving it.
My
And
gosh.
yeah, but I can tell you with all the what, there's a couple of things. And I remember doing a tour with MJ from Sage Paracon, and it's got
Yeah.
she pulled out, which only I know, and it was really bizarre. And one of the things that's always resonated all the time, the police at the time said, and I wrote, this is what I wrote down. I've still got every record, every inch of I've done. It's all document. I've got kept everything up from day one right to current day. So it
Wow.
says not the work of one man, and it said that. And I'm thinking not the work of one man. So then that makes it even harder. Because like, is it a crew? Is it was it the Masons? Was it was it what was the special branch hits and things like this? But really, after all the reading of the research, you just there's nothing there to tell you who Jack the Ripper is. There really isn't.
Wow.
So I went back to my normal life, which at the time was looking at, I had 3 care homes, and at that time I had 155 staff. So I was
Oh
quite,
wow.
and the care homes are all over the country. So I was mainly on the road a lot. Uh, but this thing of just, it was I love the East End as it is. I really do love the East End.
Wow.
So on the murder dates, I used to take my friends for a tour. We'd all, go and have a beer, have a curry, have a little walk around the murder scenes, and just there is, even as gory as that sounds, for anybody that's not done a tour, for anybody that's not walked around this place, I can tell you there is something there. It's extremely atmospheric. Uh,
Wow.
that's what it was. And then in the March 2007, my mum called me and said, "Have you seen there's a shawl for sale it was auction house not far from where I was living at the time in Suffolk, and it was meant to be taken from the fourth murder scene." And of course, I thought, well, I'm interested. I went to see it, and as you've seen it's an old garment, very big. It is covered in blood, and
Yeah.
it's certainly, you sort of wow. And then my then wife said, "Well, you're not having it. You're certainly not having that." Anyway, so it was a case of finding a reason to buy it, and it was the pattern of Michaelmas daisies, which was reported at the time, and realizing that Michaelmas was a date that was celebrated by Eastern and Western Orthodox Christians on 2 specific days of the year. That's the
Wow.
29th of September and the 8th of November. And that's three of the dates of 3 of the 5 Ripper murders, the exact dates.
Oh gosh.
So I knew that the shawl had been in Scotland Yard all through the 90s. At the time, I was actually in the East End, and they gave it back to the original owner. And I called Scotland Yard and I explained. This is Yari actually texted him. Um, um, Yari, we're still. I
Oh
don't think
bless
there's a day
you.
goodbye where we're not in touch, and this is 10 years into the fact.
Oh god.
Anyway, so yeah, going back to the Michaelmas daisies, I called the curator of Scotland Yard's Crime Museum, and I told him about the link of the shawl and the dates. And because I'm the only one that's linked the dates, and the reason why the shawl was left, because on the 20 murdered Catherine Eddowes, and he left the shawl there. The pattern on the shawl is the clue to the next date of the next murder, and it is. And
My
yet,
god.
no, that can't be refuted. Nobody can doubt that's truth. Anyway,
Yeah.
so his name was Alan McCormack, and he said, "I don't even know what." He says, "Bruce, you've told me the first bit of new, interesting news about this case in decades." And then his words were this: "I don't know why they do these books. I don't know why they do these films or these tours. We've always known who Jack the Ripper was." And he just told me the name, just like that, because
Okay.
I got resigned to the fact of nobody will ever know the real name.
Well, that's what
Anyway,
everyone said, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. So what happened was he wouldn't tell me more. He basically said, "You go and do the work. You can call me from time to time, but don't waste my time, and I'll sort of point you in the right direction." And that's what we did, and that was that journey started. So I ended up going to buy the shawl in a very unconventional way. I didn't buy it in the auction. I bought it privately a few days after, and then that was it. The journey started.
Oh no. It's unbelievable how something can just start and that's it. That's your path, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
just keeps you going.
You know what? That was my the path. I didn't realize at the time how big a pathway it would take me, and basically distract me from business, distract me from property business. I mean, I did sell the care homes in this period, and we made a lot of money, enough for me to just sit back and do just this. And then, typical me, I went and built up a big multi-million-pound property portfolio at the same time.
Wow.
But that, because I've done property since I was 20, so it's nearly 37 years now.
Oh my gosh,
That was
yeah.
do, and it was, it's just what I do. It's like when you go and make the toast or the coffee in the morning. It's just what I do.
Yeah.
Journey was something that I thought, well, you know what? It's something that you will never get the chance to do again. And I did, and I enjoyed. Yeah, the one thing I can tell you, you need patience
Oh, definitely.
beyond what you think. You really, when you're waiting for 4 years, like with the other case, 7 years.
Yeah.
But within 4 years of this, and to every little bit that worked, and all the way through, as Yori is now with me, it was sort of Yori and I went hand in hand on this journey.
Wow.
Um, I've got a lot to thank him for now and forever. And we've got other things that we're going to be doing anyway. But as much as he's a scientist and I'm not, scientists are different people, I would say, than what we are. And they
Yeah.
think differently and they act differently and they behave differently. And it took me a while to get used to how Yori is. But the one thing he is very dedicated and not dispassionate. That's the word. He's neutral. Whereas I'm saying it's him, it's him. He will rein me in, a bit like an older brother figure.
Yeah. Well, it's a scientific, isn't it? He's got to.
Well, yeah.
Go for it, really. Yeah.
And again, just this, when he saw the show, and it just so happens today's the anniversary from 10 years ago when he actually did the tests, which we found out that there was semen on the shore, that there was blood splatter, and all the evidence that this shawl from literally 10 years ago today, which is quite apt. I'm doing the interview today.
Wow.
Is all linked to the MO of that murder of Catherine Eddowes.
Gosh, I'm really honoured to have actually seen this show. As I said at the beginning, I saw your presentation at Sage, and you sort of went into the detail, sort of the whole as much process as you can get into that time slot, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously you did a lot more than that, but to actually be near the show, to see you unwrap it, and to see the evidence on there as well.
Yeah.
It's making me cringe now, because oh my gosh, you showed where a certain body part was put on the shawl, and the marks on it, everything. Oh dear.
Well, this is the thing. Yori said there was evidence of split body parts are incredibly difficult to forge. There was blood consistent with slashing, and there was semen on the shawl. So that's exactly what happened to Catherine. She had a throat cut.
Yeah.
He took body parts, and again, Yori found a kidney cell, which we knew that on that sample there, that stain that you saw, and we know that he took Catherine Eddowes' kidney with him. Sorry, as well as he. And I say this. The way I say this is because I would say I'm case hardened. If I talked about this for 20 odd years now.
Yeah.
But when I actually always think about, this is what he did to a human being. He actually did that. And it's not beyond sickness. It's sort of an insane madness. Who would do that to a human being?
Yeah.
That's what's when I say he took a uterus. He also took an intestines, put them over his shoulder. That was his MO. He did it within the space of 4 or 5 minutes, which he did have an 8-minute window. When you think of all these things, you just think this man was beyond insane. And the question I've never asked, but I do it publicly, and this is one for your viewers, is this, with such a madman, I know the fact that his brother looked after him, and I know the fact that he stayed with his family and they care for him. But how they live day to day with that man, how does that man live day to day like that? It feels in a way that you've got like a monster werewolf type, and he's in a cage and he's just let out, a bit like the Hound of the Baskervilles. He's just let out on a certain thing, commits his murder, then he's put back in his cage. I think.
But would he? Oh dear! Could he push that aside? Did he live a normal life? What was his characteristics?
Well, he was schizophrenic. He did.
Oh, okay. So he did. Yeah.
So what we know for certain, he had a real bitter hatred of women. Virulence is a word that comes up. We know he was a misogynist. We knew that he was paranoid schizophrenia. We'll say I'm a therapist, so there's no paranoid schizophrenia anymore. It's just schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So there was that. We know that at some point he worked as a hairdresser, so he would have had some sort of anatomical knowledge. We lived literally 5 minutes from the hospital. In fact, he lived 500 yards from the third murder. The front door was literally.
He was a hairdresser and he did women's hair.
Well, this is Yeah,
Oh,
but
God.
so there's another thing. So this is conjecture, this is assumption, this is not fact, or as
Yeah, okay.
but you know what you think? Well, they might have gone with him because they knew him because he probably cut their hair,
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
a penny or a tuppence or a sixpence or whatever, farthing back then. But there's that little familiarity that might have been there why they went with him and trusted him. We don't know that for a fact. There's no evidence.
No, it
Think
is
about
hard to get evidence, isn't it, from that time period?
well, you're talking. The police did do a formidable job, and they did
Yeah.
catch. Oh, so they did catch him. He was basically reported to the police and given to the police by his brother
Oh,
because
wow. Okay.
that happened. He basically, after the fifth murder, he tried to attack his own sister. That was enough. The brothers had had enough of him. They gave him up. The police took him to Brighton, to Brighton Hove, took him to a seaside home, put him in a living room, confronted him with the only witness, which was Israel Schwartz, which I got correct, which is what got me this part that I'm telling you. So I'm telling you was told to me by Scotland Yard, not out of a book.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so and in fact, the day I wrote the notes, I've still got the original of all the notes that Scotland Yard told me on that day. So basically, he committed his 5 murders. Just before then, he was just about to murder his sister. Got caught, got given to the police. He was identified, but not in, back then. There were strict rules. So because there wasn't a formal identification, a confrontation is considered a weak ID and not enough to stand up in court. And the eyewitness wouldn't stand up in court. And one of the reasons for Jewish law, because they were both Jewish, was the fact is if you see your fellow Jew committing an act of crime and you don't report it, you're as responsible as that person. So there
Yeah.
was that. There's also a thing of Jews giving up to Gentile justice, which is always that's a written fact as well to this case. But the eyewitness wouldn't testify, so they were stuck, and they actually, for want of a better word, buggered up the arrest, if you like. So
Yeah.
the 24-hour watch, he knew he was caught. Now, there's a few holes in here that wasn't in the first book, but definitely in the second book. And then he was locked up in Stepney Workhouse, then moved to Colney Hatch, and then to Leavesden, where he died. But they definitely got him, and that's why he disappeared. He disappeared from public, but basically he was arrested, and then uh, they had to let him go. Certified him insane, got that sorted, and put him in the workhouse. And these little holes of what happened, I've plugged those for the next book. Because again, what the great thing is, it's a never end. I say it's a never ending story. It is a never ending story.
Yeah.
Just finding these little bits of evidence, and there's these some wonderful things. And again, when you have a day off, and you go to a spa day, or I'll go to the archives and find something. So
Yeah.
this after one of the murders, there was this woman called Mrs. Fiddymont, and she said, "Oh, this guy covered in blood came in after one of the murders, and he put it down to a guy called Jacob Smith, which he wasn't a very well man." And I found Jacob Smith that he was admitted into Colney Hatch, same asylum, um,
Wow.
but they released him. And the two pictures of him going in and coming out, he looked a lot better when he was released. There's no chance,
Gosh.
but you get these, I would say, amateur detectives, which is I don't know if I'm an amateur detective anymore, but these amateur detectives, I think, well, it's Jacob Smith. Let's chuck that into the hat. There's another name. 161 suspects. It's got to be one of them. And I think when you actually look at the story, it really isn't as glamorous as it's been made to be over the years. There was no prince. There were no masons. There was nothing. There was just a simple case of a madman, schizophrenic Polish immigrants came over, certainly took out his brutality on unfortunates in the area, literally within a 15 minutes walk from his front door. And he got literally out of the area of the murders, if you like. And then he got identified and locked up. And that's really all this case is. What I can tell you is that the name Jack the Ripper has carried, and again, the same era, same sort of, as Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, the
Yeah.
Wolfman. These names are all at the same time. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It's all this era. So Jack the Ripper's carried with this and this mystery that everybody loves a mystery. But I can tell you, of all these people that's confronted me on stage saying, oh, it's this guy, it's not your guy, it's this guy. You know what? If you've actually done the work and the research, you will find that you would just shut up and actually accept that it was him.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's the amount of time that you've taken.
Oh, yeah.
Finding the shawl.
Well, the show just came up by chance, and if it wasn't been one
Yeah,
Friday night, I would never have gone and bought it. You know,
yeah,
it was a Thursday night, yeah. So yeah, I remember turning up, and I had a very posh car back then, and I went quite smart, but not like top hat and tails, or.
yeah,
And I remember standing with Stuart Evans, like for me, the foremost authority on the case at the time. And I stood with him, and I had a good chat with him. He's a very nice man, and I thought he was going to buy it, so I stood with him. And at those times, as I say, I wasn't, I wasn't certainly had a nice, I had a decent bank account, so I was ready to play. I will outbid you. That's what I was going to do at the time, But he didn't buy. He didn't even bid. So I thought, oh
oh
god,
wow,
still, yeah, yeah.
yeah. But go back to when you first started going to the police, though. How? Why did they talk to you? Like, you
That's
must have
quite
had
easy.
to be quite They were quite happy about
Yeah, you can actually call the police. They are human beings. And
that.
I just said, listen, I've just watched this film from hell. I just want to know about the Jack the Ripper case. Could you tell me any more? They put me through
Yeah.
to the museum because they've got a part.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
they've got a part. It's so they don't like it called the Black Museum. They like it called the Training Museum. And
Okay.
I met the curator. Well, sorry, I didn't meet him face to face. I spoke to the curator, and he told me everything I needed to know to get me started to a queue.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Uh, some really, so when I go and do some desk research, I got some really wonderful photos and stuff that I've never ever put out. And I've got the one of so the guy that Donald Swanson, who was one of the guys in charge, and his report of the identification of Kuzminski, who was the Ripper, and
Yeah.
the eyewitness accounts. And I've had that document in my hand and reading it. And you know what? It's one piece of paper, and it's very, very basic. It's like a 12-year-old could have written. It's just like a table written out in pencil, and then just,
Yeah.
and it was just fascinating. And what we did do from that one piece of paper, which I'll just give you a little hint for the next book, is 3 of the 5 criteria of the identification matched from Elizabeth Strong
Wow.
Grenadiers.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I've got a big question here from Vaughn, and I think you've probably been asked this one before. So, how did they manage to rule out all the other suspects if there's no further information? Do not
There,
accept the man
were,
by the shore.
there
Uh,
were only 3 suspects. There were no one else.
yeah, and Prince Albert was the main suspect for many years as well.
No, no, he
No.
wasn't. That was a complete. Okay, so let's go through this. Prince
Yeah.
Albert wasn't even in Whitechapel at the time of the murders. He was in Balmoral with Queen Victoria.
Okay.
So Queen Victoria is his alibi. So work that one out. He wasn't even there.
Right. Okay.
Walter, it's another one. He was in Paris at the time. So how did he do that? You
Yeah.
know, I could each one challenge me on anyone. William Gull. He's 72. The eyewitnesses that did see him, he was in his like early 30s, and William Gull had 2 strokes. That's the film from hell. There's no chance it was him. There's no John Netley. There's no Annie Crook. These are all just. There's only 3. There was Michael Ostrog, Montague John Jewett, and Aaron Kosminski. The 3 suspects. There were only 3. Michael Ostrog was in his 50s. He came from a town only 10 minutes away from Kosminski. Montague John Jewett only because he was found in the Thames because he committed suicide a month after the last murder. So they thought, well, he could have been him. But
Wow.
Druitt was a barrister that went to become a teacher, and he got sacked from the school he was teaching, old boys' school, for some
Okay.
impropriety against one of the boys. So, I
Yeah.
know playing cricket 2 days in Blackheath after one of the murders, and you're like, well, I can't see that really, mate.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
the others
That's true.
made up long after the case.
Well, that's right. Like you've got the initial, you've got the police sort of going out there, they've got the evidence, and then like years later, people are still looking up things, aren't they? When
Or
it's
making it
gone,
up.
and and
What was it?
it's
So I know the owner of the diary, the Ripper Diary, and
okay.
knows that's not real. But what he's trying to do is get the validity of it if it was written at the time. So that no James Maybrick, even though he was staying in Middlesex Street at the time, which is Petticoat Lane, very close to all the murders. No James Maybrick. Good story though. And then if it was James Maybrick, it's going to be James Maybrick's brother. Let's bring him in. Well, no, at all. You know, there's one. I remember years ago there was a book called Uncle Jack, and it was just this one guy that had just treated Polly Nichols once, and it was just on his record. I thought because there was a link that then he's going to be Jack the Ripper. So the very, very, very spurious. To be honest, I've had everybody challenge me on tours.
Of course you have, yeah.
You know, was it the Ripper and the Royals that came out? I think it was Sickett's grandson that brought out the story of the Royals. Now we can definitely say this. Now, if you go back to 1988, when all the documents were released, made public, there was a fantastic documentary with Peter Ustinov. They had like a chief judge in there. And they said anyone saying that it was Prince Albert Victor, if Prince Albert Victor was alive, he'd have a strong case against them for defamation.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's right. You know, going against royalty and all that.
Well, it wasn't.
That would have been covered up as well, though, wouldn't it? If it was him, wouldn't.
You know, to say there was a miscreant, I certainly wouldn't knock the royal family, especially in this current climate, because I love the royal family, and what's going on right now is a real.
It's terrible. Yeah.
But I can tell you, it certainly wasn't Prince Albert Victor. He was not Whitechapel. How could he have committed the murders when he was in?
No. Yeah. No. Yeah, certainly couldn't be much further away, could he?
Exactly.
One of the houses, yeah. But yeah, so you've done the walk in the area then. So you used to do a walk around Whitechapel.
So if we bring it back to the context of this interview,
with
the paranormal side of this, all I can tell you is before I realised I saw the film from Hell and I'd been knocking around the East End, there was a time where I felt that something had happened there, something big, but I couldn't really put my finger on it.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really freaky thing when I did find out. But I've had some very, very gifted and unique paranormal groups, you know, commission me and take me on the tours.
Yeah.
Me take them on the tours. And as you say, MJ came up with some fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had another team, which were, I would say, over and above any other team that's ever come with me. And they were telling me stuff that very, very weird and a bit spooky. So one of the things they were telling me was that there's a very tall man with a very black rim hat. And I know if you know the Jewish community, which when I drive home, I go through Stoke Newington and Stamford Hill. And even at 8:00 in the morning, they're still out with these big hats. Wow. And this guy always comes with you. One of them told me Kosminski comes with me all the time because he likes to hear his story. There's another one of what Kosminski did with the flesh and the body parts. There was one, and it's on my Instagram page, where they had this portal, and we were standing at the third murder scene of Elizabeth Stride. And sorry, this is Yori still texting me. He doesn't know I'm doing the interview, by the way.
Bless him.
Says I'm Swedish, and Elizabeth Stride was Swedish. That was quite a bizarre moment for me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's different things. So there was a woman that said she could taste blood, like the metallic taste of blood, when we were at Catherine Eddowes' murder scene. There's a couple of ladies that came on a tour that looks just like Polly Nichols and Martha Tabram. So one thing that people might not know, there were 11 murders in Whitechapel, and only 5 are attributed to Jack the Ripper. So there were 2 before, then the 5, then the rest. It's interesting that Martha Tabram was the one before Polly Nichols 3 weeks before. Now, she was brutally stabbed 39 times. Now, again, if you just take yourself into the mind of a murderer, if you like, when you kill somebody, would you murder somebody? You stab them to rob everything, and they just run away? It's a sort of very personal, to stab them times, and in the genital area, in the breasts. I think through a throat. Now that, again, I say battle hardened with this story. just think of stabbing someone 39 times, how personal that is. So
Yeah.
that was his first attempt, you know. And then he worked up his MO of, you know, what he did with body parts and intestines and cut the throat. And so when you get to the fourth Whitechapel murder or the second Ripper murder, you know, Annie Chapman, he did try and cut her head off, you know,
Gosh.
at the
Yeah.
same, roughly the same time. There was like torso murders at the same time. And very famously, there's one called, and that's in the Ripper stuff. This, what I'm going to tell you now, is in the Ripper case files. It's called
Okay.
the Tree Torso. And it just happens to be, I know because I've done the work, 6 minutes from Aaron Kosminski, from the third murder scene, sorry, from Elizabeth Stry's murder scene. And it was committed on the 11th of September, I think it was the 11th of September, 11th or 15th September, 1889, which is actually Kosminski's birthday.
Oh gosh.
And it's just around the corner, you know. And again, they never knew who she was either. So there was torso murders, there was these murders, and then there was just general, I would say, general murders, which were way into the severity of the Jack the Ripper murders. Yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly wasn't a place you wanted to live.
Yeah, it was a different time in those days, wasn't it? And
Yeah, yeah,
sort of crime was graphic and yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's then it does make you question how they just pinned that number out of all of them to him.
Because of the MO, it's because of the way that they were murdered.
Yeah.
That was by the same hand. And the ones after the last murder victim, Mary Jane Kelly, weren't as ferocious.
Okay. Right.
You know, that's how they knew, you know, throat cut left to right, the way that the bodies were positioned. Tried to be, first one was Polly, sorry, tried to be disemboweled. Second was she was disemboweled, intestines over his shoulder, body parts taken. Elizabeth Stride throat cut, but he was interrupted before he could do any, you know, before he could disembowel her. Within the hour, you know, Catherine Eddowes was found completely brutalised. And then on the last murder, which was 5 weeks after the double events, which is the Catherine and Elizabeth, was Mary Jane Kelly. Now, the four first victims were in the 40s, and Mary Jane Kelly was in mid 20s. But the reason why she was chosen, by then everybody was on high alert for the Ripper.
Of course. You know, be
Yeah.
scary for any woman, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Or,
yeah.
you know, families
You
as
know, a
well.
woman would shout Jack the Ripper, and that guy would get beaten up. So she had her own room, you see, where the other ones didn't, because they were in day-to-day DOS house living. It's like multiple beds in a room.
Yeah.
And so Mary Jane Kelly had her own room, so clearly that's why she was chosen. But again, it's not as if this guy, you know, we think of a madman, but he certainly wasn't stupid. You know, when you look at this, so the work that I've done, you know, scoping out the murder scenes, knowing where to, you know, people say, you know, he was just pure luck, but I don't think that, you know, if you want the truth. So on the night of the double event between Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, if he wasn't interrupted with Elizabeth Stride, he would have performed his ritualistic mutilation and gone home, which was literally at the top of the road where he lived, where his brother lived, which is 16 Greenfield Road, which is a street, which is still there.
Okay.
He scoped out Mitre Square, and that probably would have been his next and last murder. And obviously not Catherine, he would have been a murder victim. But because he didn't mutilate Elizabeth, then he went and mutilated Catherine Eddowes. And also, the direction of where Catherine Eddowes was in going into the city. Now, there'd been a Ripper murder, so everybody's going out of the city towards that murder. Left him plenty of time to go to the prostitutes' church, to then pick Catherine Eddowes up, to then take her to Mitre Square, which is a very dark, dingy, non-entity of a place. It certainly was back then. And, you know, he did what he did. Now, I've been asked, and there's people that cast aspersions, many, about how do we know that the guy, acting Sergeant Amos Simpson, took the shawl, you know, was given the shawl, if you like, at that time of the murders. And I found the documents to prove that they were there at the time. That's going in the next book. That he was seen So there's this great testimony by a sergeant who said that he saw a man coming out of Mitre Square with this glow in his eyes, and he just said something like, "Good evening," and he was extremely calm.
Wow.
You know, whether it was him, it's got to have been him. Um,
Yeah.
but these wonderful little snippets of research, and again, because I've been at uni for 10 years, so it's knowing how to get the research and do the work. It's those
Yeah.
wonderful little pieces. Think, Christ, that's how he was there that night. Um, so I don't think Mary Jane Kelly would have been murdered if Louis Deemschutz didn't interrupt him on his third murder. So he might have only murdered four, because he definitely was going to do the 29th of September and the
Yeah.
8th of November. So it's these things that they're all up for debate or conversation. What we
Yeah.
fact is he murdered five. The MO he got more violent towards the end, and he had about 2 hours with Mary Jane Kelly to completely do whatever he wanted. And what he did to me, even today, I mean, oddly enough, I can't watch horror films like Saw when
No,
it's
I
too
haven't
gory. I
seen
can't
it.
turn
It's
away.
yeah.
So gratuitous. Yeah, it's not for me. But the picture of Mary Jane Kelly is still the one. All this time that I've looked at it, is still the most horrific
Yeah.
atrocity of a human being or a woman that I've ever seen in my life. Really, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen the pic. Well, a lot of us have seen the picture, haven't we? It's shocking.
Yeah,
Von's got a couple of questions there because
sure.
Von. She's a great friend and questioning everything. So, if Kaczynski murdered all the people, why, when he was in the asylum and after released, reported as classed as homicidal and not a danger to humans?
He was classed as homicidal. It's
Okay.
actually, if you just go online, the documents there are homicidal.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was classed as homicidal.
Yeah. Okay. And the shawl as well.
Yeah.
So, how did you sort of notice the shawl, and get? How did you use that to prove then? Because I know
Ah,
you mentioned it in
this
the
is where
Paracon, didn't you?
so this is where the genius of Dr. Yari Lohalainen comes in. So basically, you need an ancient DNA specialist, which is what Yari is. In fact, he's a lot more than that, but that's one of his strings to his bow. So Yari managed to get. So the problem with the evidence, the what was on the shawl was contamination, and again,
Yeah.
some very I'd say top. I wouldn't call it top at all. Had a pop at Yari's work, which is very unfounded. Yari managed to get uncontaminated samples embedded in the weave of the shawl, which is between, it's like, it shows about a millimeter thick, or it's a couple of
Yeah.
millimeters thick, and he managed to get uncontaminated samples embedded in the weave. So he just got past all the problem and contamination, and then we found, when he got a full DNA profile on it through mitochondrial DNA, and from that I found the direct female descendants of Catherine Eddowes, and we got a perfect match. So we knew that the blood on the shawl belonged to the fourth victim. So then he did the stain sample where the blood, where the human body, or where the body parts were. Just remember, if it was animal blood or anything, it would show. This isn't just a simple technique. This is years of work that Yari actually invented and created himself. So it wasn't just a buccal swab, sort of take a cotton bud and that's all it was. Yari did a lot more than that. And then he found, as I say, kidney cell in the split body part, and then on the semen. So when we knew that the shawl was valid, we dated it and we got it back to pre 1854. So we knew it wasn't a modern day forgery. And then because we did the work, we found out that it was pure silk, that the dye in there is waterproof, so it certainly would have been owned, but it wouldn't have been owned by Catherine Eddowes, and it was expensive. Now we know
Yeah.
that Catherine Eddowes and her partner had a really bad season hot picking down in Gravesend, so they had no money. So he had to pawn the day before. He had to pawn his boots so they could get a DOS, so they could get a knight's kip, the pair of them. So if number one, she wouldn't have the money. If she'd stolen it, it would have been reported. She would have been found. So we found out, and the dye actually came from St. Petersburg in northern Russia, so Eastern European, which is where Kosminski came from, so Eastern Europe,
Wow.
Poland. So basically, we knew that the shawl wasn't in our possession, in which case it was only in possession of the murderer. So we took it to the murder scene, and if that was the case, then the semen on there could have only been deposited by him. So that really, really was. I vividly remember that day, and literally every hair on the back of my neck, thinking, "Christ, do you realise what we've just discovered here?" And that was
Gosh.
done through a very serious scientist as well. So then, the painstaking work of getting some sperm head analysis, which is another guy that Yari knew, thankfully. There's only 8 in Europe that does this.
Wow.
And we managed to get cells, we managed to get DNA. And Yari, again, to do that work, uncontaminated cells, and to get the DNA. And he used this thing called laser capture microscopy or something like this. So basically, I couldn't even go into the university that day. I wasn't allowed because I wasn't a scientist. It was quite
Oh,
bitter.
wow.
I went and spent it in Manchester instead. Anyway, when we definitely had the profile, the DNA, we managed. It took 10 months to find a living descendant of his sister, again down the female line. And again, he did the work, and we got a match. And that was a year. That was 13 months. That part. That's how long that took. And I'll never forget that Friday when Yori emailed me saying, "You know what? Have a look," and he could see the perfect match, and it was just that phenomenal validation.
He emailed you. He didn't phone you.
Typical Yari, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So,
Well, yeah. I had to get when he found the match for Catherine Eddowes. I had to drive up to Liverpool to see him. You know.
so he just like, oh, just come and have a look, and it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
go and check your email, and that's Yari's way. As I
Yeah.
said,
Well, yeah.
love the guy to bits. He's
I bet
just
he was grinning though to himself.
yeah. This amazing validation of the work, and
Yeah.
it was just phenomenal. It really was.
Yeah.
That's how we knew it was Aaron Kosminski all along.
It's yeah. But oh my gosh, all the time and like money you would have spent sort of
Oh
like
yeah,
going to locations and
yeah,
different police forces and uh,
yeah.
how many people did you interview then? Did you speak to
Oh
any relatives or have dealings with
yeah.
relatives? And
That's interesting. I'm in touch. So I've got a great friend in the direct descendants of Catherine Eddowes. Um, there's a couple that I'm great friends with from Polly Nichols, descended from her.
wow,
I'm great friends with the great great grandniece, great three greats niece of Kosminski. We're very great friends.
oh wow,
Um, the person that gave me the DNA, I've never spoken since because I can't give her identity up.
yeah,
It
that's
wants nothing
fine.
to do with it.
Yeah,
Um, there's a lady that came in touch with me. So the guy that found Annie Chapman's body, I'm friends with her on social media.
wow,
A good few friends with descendants of Catherine Eddowes. One of her nieces, great nieces, is another good friend of mine. So yeah, it's nice to have these people in your life
yeah,
and
that's
get their
right.
acknowledgements rather than the doubters and just chuck in any sort of nonsensical question. Go and do the research, and you'll sit with me and say, you know what, shake my hand. Yeah, you've done it.
Yeah,
And it's great that these people are linked to me in this way, or have never questioned the work. And
it's
what I've got to
good.
say is, even though I've done the work, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am without Dr. Yori Lokalainen.
Wow, but yeah, like 7 years of work. It's
Oh no, 40 for that. 7 years.
14,
Second case, 14 years for that one.
14 total. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
I know.
my gosh. And like, I bet there's some nights like you just wouldn't sleep, would you? Because you just get on a mission with like looking through the documents and
Well, yeah, back then, yeah, it was.
yeah, you just get carried away, wouldn't you? And just
Yeah. I mean,
oh my
it's say that the places I've been. So I've been to the biggest library, Cambridge Library. I got in there for the day. getting some real, sensitive documents.
Wow.
I've been over to the London Hospital, and they've got an archive. So there's this guy that talks about Feigenbaum, a guy called Feigenbaum, because some guy reckoned it was a sailor. And what he did was he put when the ships were in port at the time of the murders, and he found this guy Feigenbaum. And the guy that found it actually wrote to the chief commissioner and said, "If you don't answer my question, I'm going to go to the press." And they just went back and said, "It's not him. We've got everything. Thank you for your time." But yet this guy goes, "Well, it's got to be Feigenbaum because he was mentioned," and tried to make a career out of it. There was only one man that was the Ripper. Thankfully, he was named. He was identified. We've confirmed it with DNA evidence, which
Yeah.
is, again, the shows the only one piece of evidence from the murders. And, I certainly would have mentioned that if I wasn't completely correct.
Yeah, that's right. Like, you spent so long on it, and yeah, and you've got you've really gone to the nth degree getting the evidence, haven't you?
Yeah,
And gone
yeah, yeah,
to the experts, like specialists and everything. But yeah,
yeah.
got a question from Von then.
Uh,
Are there any copies of the reports available to the public? Because it'd be
yeah,
interesting
they
to
all are.
read.
They all are. You can go, all you have to do is you go to the archives at Kew, the Metropolitan Archives, or the National Archives at Kew, and they're all there.
Wow,
Yeah, accessible to the public.
that's yeah,
So you can go and see the Dear Boss letter. So they've done like exact copies of them, the pictures. In fact, I've got. I don't put them out, but they will come out in the book.
yeah.
All files that they're all there. You can go along at any time you want.
Wow,
2 bits of ID and you're in. And the case files for Kosminski, the Metropolitan Archives, Farringdon Station is the nearest station. They're very amenable, but they know me very well down there.
yeah.
Everything you want to know about Kosminski. I've done all the asylum records, the photographs, you name it, I've done it. Interestingly enough, the file that Kosminski's in, about a few months earlier, there is a guy that said he was Jack the Ripper.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, it's interesting, that one. You can look through that. But yeah, they're all public access.
Yeah. We've got then how did Kosminski die in the end then?
Well, he was 54, and I think it was March the 24th or 25th, 1919, and he died of gangrene.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And in
Yeah,
fact, so the interesting thing is there's not much information on the records of the asylum records of Kosminski, but I've got a very great friend who was the what's the word I'm looking for? He looked after Leavesden Asylum, the marshal. That's what he was, and he told me because there's a 20-year gap of asylum records for Kosminski, and I'm wondering what they did. So I said, well, would they have? Because at the time, lobotomies they started in France, so that they lobotomize him and not record it. But actually, he said they would have given him a lot of lithium, and he was in the extreme. So there's a ward in Leavesden Asylum. There was a ward in Leavesden Asylum for extreme cases, and that's
right,
where
okay.
Leavesden. But they would have given him a lot of lithium. So the bits that I've got every document there is on this man I've got, and
Wow.
so the file reads that you could see that his health was deteriorating. He had one little episode where he kicked a chair, but by then he was completely gone anyway. And in fact, when they put him in the asylum, he was completely gone. In Coney Hatch, I can't remember the year, 94. Or and what happened was he just said, it died of gangrene.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody says you've got a hungry cat.
Oh, me? Oh, no.
Bless you.
Always wants food, that cat.
Oh god, my dog's snoring. Bless him. He's used to this every week. So yeah, Eric says it's a lot more though. Everything had to fall in place for any of this to work, and
What's
yeah,
that? What was the question? Sorry.
it's a lot more though. Everything had to fall in place for any of this to work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean
And
his story?
yeah, the whole story. But
Or
yeah,
my story? You know what? I would say luck. I had a lot of luck. Really, it did feel like
Well,
I was
that sure is a biggie.
well, without the shawl, I certainly wouldn't be here,
Yeah,
in any way, shape, or form. It's cost me a lot, seriously,
yeah,
in every single way possible. But yeah, again, it's the journey, and just appreciate and accept you're on a journey, you know,
yeah.
and it's not always going to be good.
Oh, that's right. I think like everyone's got their own journey, haven't they? And
Yeah,
you venture which way you're drawn, and you've been drawn on this path, haven't you?
I certainly have. Yeah,
And you sort of went down the route, and yeah.
yeah. To put your head into the mind of a serial killer,
God.
which is what I've done twice now. It takes a unique sense, I would say, of skill, to actually
Yeah.
divorce your feelings from the atrocities that they committed and put your mind of what you're trying to achieve, which is to solve the mystery or to solve the case.
Oh,
Uh,
that's right.
on the second one, all I can tell you is somebody very important called me to confirm what I've said, but I can't say any more than that.
Yeah.
But you know what, it was very, very hard at the beginning for both. More Kosminski, more the Ripper, knowing the streets and the changing of the streets and how he got from A to B without being seen. And that was the
Yes.
trick, because he did get from A to B without being seen.
Yeah, that's right.
There's an interesting one. So, uh, on the night of the double event, so when he murdered Catherine Eddowes in Mitre Square, we know that he went back out of the city, so to Gilson Street, where he wrote the Gilson Street graffiti, "The Jews are the men who will not be blamed for nothing." And then he went. There was a. It's not there anymore, but there's one in Commercial Street, which are these stone baths, if you like.
Okay.
And Osborne Street is at the bottom of Brick Lane on going into Whitechapel High Street. But there was one of those stone baths there, and there was blood in there, and the police officer said he'd literally missed the Ripper by minutes. Now,
Oh, gosh.
if you go to Osborne Street geographically, the next diagonally 5 minutes from there is Greenfield Road, which is where he was going home. So
Yeah.
where did he stay during the time of the murders? And on the tours, I started doing that and showing people where that was. And when you see the convenience of that to my murder street for the third murder, you realise I had to murder, but it was too risky to go into Whitechapel at that time.
Gosh, it's unbelievable. It really. It was a different world in those days, wasn't it? And
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say, I've lived his life. Yeah, I've lived that. I've
God, yeah.
lived on the streets. I was homeless at one point. I
Oh,
know.
okay.
Oh, many years ago. Yeah, many minutes, about
Yeah.
35 years ago now. So I felt it. I know different things where he would have gone. The direction he would have gone. The common sense not being found way.
Yeah.
All of these things are just amazing. I would say, for me, there is no more of this journey left. Once this second book's done,
Yeah.
there is no more to be told. And I'm looking forward to the third one of these that I'm going to do.
Yeah. Anne says, well, you've sort of answered this now. Do you feel the door is closed, or will you still find things out, or is that it?
No, as I say, for me,
That's it.
no more research I need
You've
to do.
done it. Yeah.
I,
You've got everything answers
yeah,
you want.
absolutely. It's been a great time. I wouldn't relive it.
God, no, no.
But what it has done is just remember, even though it took 14 years, it didn't take every single day of 14. I
Well,
did
of
do it.
course it doesn't, no, because you're waiting, aren't you?
Yeah,
All the
there's some,
time, like you want some information, you're waiting for someone to return that. You've got people ignoring emails or phone calls and
yeah,
things like that, haven't you?
all the time. I think it was more of an adventure. The first one, the second,
Yeah,
the third one will be an adventure. And to be honest, I'm actually looking forward to that one because the training that I've learned organically, not in a school in a lab, and I've learned organically. The second one was very, very hard. The third one will be a lot easier because I've learned I've learned the skill.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
and I'm actually really, if I could just put these two on the shelf, so there you go, done. If
Yeah,
other stuff to happen, I would love to just go say, right, I want to go and do that one now.
yeah, that's
And
it.
then, yeah, yeah.
Anne says, did you get mixed reactions from the families and from the relatives? Like you say, you're
Only,
friends with a lot of them.
yeah, there was only two people. So there was one. We needed to see if we could exhume Kosminski.
Oh God,
I
yeah.
know where he's buried, and I've been there several times. And I needed the Ministry of Justice license signing by a family member. Yeah, it is on that. Um, and one of the sisters wasn't very pleasant with me,
Mm,
and I met them one night to say, "Look, could you please help me with this? This is what I've done.
yeah,
This is what I've got. This is all I want to do, and this is why I want to do it."
yeah,
And what they came back with there, what's in it for us? You know, what money are you going to give me? Her son's standing there, arms folded, ready to punch me. You know, so there's that one. And I had to put them in the place because I'm certainly no shrinking violet, and I won't put up with anyone's BS.
yeah.
So they did that didn't go down well. And then they wanted a lot of money from me, and I wasn't prepared to do that either.
That's right.
There was that, and then there was the lady that gave me the DNA. She didn't want any more involvement.
I
And
can get,
as
yeah.
I was doing like global interviews, I literally was doing interviews all around the world. I went to meet her, and she's ready to really lay into me. And a mum came, and the mum goes, "Look, can you sign your book?" She got a copy of the book. Said, "Can you sign the book?" And she's like,
Bless
"Oh."
her.
I was like, okay, okay.
Oh no.
So, but that was sad
Yeah,
because I really liked her, and I would have really enjoyed
yeah.
being a lifelong friend.
It is a tough,
Yeah.
yeah, it is tough.
The main negativity is the ripperologists that have like, I sort of killed their story, and the tour companies because of course, they make a lot. They've got a vested interest in keeping the Ripper an enigma. But
Yeah,
normally, any of the haters are these people, really.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Lynn sort of says, I bet you've made some amazing friends and people on this journey.
Oh yeah, yeah. Again, from even Sage Paracon,
Yeah, like all of us who heard it were like really blown away by it.
Well, I'm in touch with a good few of you guys outside
Yeah.
that.
Well, with Sylvia watching, oh gosh, there's somebody else. Oh no, what's her name? Lynn Peters is watching as well.
Oh, Lynn, I had breakfast.
Yeah, so yeah, there's one or two watching. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but for us to see the shawl, it was amazing, and yeah, you could see
This
that
this is what
there's something on there.
this is a very singular, lonely life. This is something. Uh, Even partners I've been with, my wife certainly didn't get it. This is a very lonely journey. Since I got involved with you guys, it felt like more I belonged to a family that really understood who I am. Uh,
Yeah,
but it is a very singular job. And to be honest, the only person, as I say, is Yari, sort of hand in hand. And I've got another friend, very, very good friend now, who helped me on the second job, um, which I think which is
yeah,
Claire. Uh,
yeah.
very, really, I spoke to her this morning. I
Oh,
always
bless her.
a lot of time for Claire, and always will have.
Yeah,
There's a
she's
couple of other
amazing.
people, and a few other people that have linked with, but on the whole, this journey, as I say, there's a lady called Corinne that came to do a photo shoot one night,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I've met Corinne.
I put that out. She captured me on my own walking up this dark street up Fornia Street, and that really is my life. That has been my life in this.
Wow.
And it's no one's coming with you. No one's you're on your own. This is your own. It is a very singular journey, and
Yeah,
the sad. Really, that's the only saddest thing about this. Thankfully, with the second job, I've got a team, so
yeah,
that's not lonely. But when I'm on there, I'm
yeah,
on my own. So yeah, that's the only downside to this, really.
yeah. It's difficult. I did get a question here of Annette, have you ever had a group or medium tell you something that only you had discovered? And you said, like, when you went
Yeah.
round London, you were going with paranormal groups, and they were coming out with information, weren't they?
Okay, so one of the biggest ones, and this was from MJ. So on the first day of the research, I found that Catherine Eddowes, a woman in a pub, had overheard Catherine Eddowes saying that she was going to be given. She thought she knew who the Ripper was, and she was going to get given 5 shillings for the information. That's in the if you go through the archives, it's there.
Okay.
And so we thought that Catherine Eddowes, that it's not a fact at all, that Catherine Eddowes was going to her murder to go and get those 5 shillings. She was just going to go and get some money so she'd get a DOS for the rest of the night.
Oh.
But MJ said around to me, says, "What's this thing about the shillings?" And only I know that story.
Oh, wow.
So what happened to Mary Jane Kelly was she was so butchered you couldn't even recognise her. We don't even know really if that was Mary Jane Kelly, which is sort of alluded to in the film From Hell. And he said she MJ was saying about touching her tummy as if she was pregnant. You know that Mary Jane Kelly was pregnant. Interesting, MJ is the first 2 letters of the middle name, the first middle name of the final victim. So there's those 2 things. I knew that on the 3rd murder that there was a police officer, and he did see a tall Jewish man with a large black brimmed hat. And it's interesting that team that came with me, Hannah, is just this gifted. You should link with her because Hannah Birchall, her name is. She is out of everybody I've met, she's the number 1 over MJ, over everybody I've ever met. She's the number 1 gifted individual I've ever met in my life on this. Yeah, Hannah, she's a wonderful person, and she said, you know, it was her that said that I'm getting followed by this man, and that there was a man fitting that exact description. And interestingly enough, another man, I forget the guy's name, he's with Hannah, and he drew the picture of this man, so I've got that. Now, the thing which I never knew about, so when the kidney was was sent with the From Hell letter to the head of the Vigilance Committee, George Lusk, on the 16th of October, 1888, it looks like he ate half the kidney. Said I fried it was very nice.
Oh, gosh.
He basically ate these things like a feast in front of a mirror with all sorts of knives and forks laid out. So, you know, sort of like when you eat from the outside, it used from the outside in, and it was like a ritual. And it was like, well, yes, because he you know, if he had the kidney, you know, what would stop him eating the other body parts? And this is the most gruesome thing that we're talking about. But this is the concept of a serial killer. And the one thing that I've always wanted is to disperse the which I'll never do, that I can see. Jack the Ripper doesn't exist. There is no such thing as Jack the Ripper. It was a made-up name by a reporter to sensationalize these murders. Jack the Ripper is like a fictional character, and that's been given the name to a madman that butchered women. And as I'm telling you that this man is eating body parts, that he's trying to cut the head off, that he's disemboweling them, that he's taking the body parts, this is who this man really was. And yet he's sensationalized in the same way like Dracula is. Dracula was just, you know, as you well know, was a Bram Stoker story that was based on Vlad the Impaler, but it was a fantasy story. It's not, you know, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, not true. You know, not true. You know, these stories are not true. The Jack the Ripper story is true. That we're victims, that we're people he needs to answer for. So all really was bringing closure to families, finding justice, naming the man who it really was, which is what I've done. You know, albeit
which, like, you know, everyone was trying to do. You know, like the police were set out to do it. You know, they could get the best evidence at that time, couldn't they?
Don't forget, in Robert Anderson and Donald Swanson between them. So Robert Anderson did his memoirs and said we knew who the Ripper was, but he feels like if we don't need to name him, we knew who wrote from the Dear Boss that named the Jack the Ripper, that put the name Jack the Ripper in. They knew who that was, just an enterprise journalist, and they didn't see sort of that the police force knew, but they kept it between, so they didn't want to speak out of school. And then Donald Swanson, in his copy of Anderson's memoirs, wrote Aaron Kosminski was the suspect.
Wow. Okay.
There's something else in there which is coming in the second book, which I can't reveal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. You don't want to. Yeah.
Oh my God, Russ.
So why didn't they take it further then? Why didn't they charge him and stuff?
Because they could. Well, what could they do?
Yeah.
They couldn't make the scene. Back then, you had to either catch him in the act.
Oh, okay, right.
Or confess.
Well, yeah, they're not going to
There wasn't
get
any
that,
DNA work back then, Fingerprint in infancy, in major infancy.
No.
So, so the eyewitness wouldn't testify. They had him, but they couldn't arrest him because they buggered up the identification. So what did they do? They just certified him insane and locked him away.
Yeah.
End of the story. That's
right. Yeah. So when are you going to publish the second book then on Jack the Ripper?
This year.
This year, all right. Okay.
Yeah. We'll wait till that's all done actually.
Yeah.
Completely done. There's only one thing that Yari and I have to do. We're not far off doing that.
Yeah, that's cool then. So is the Naming Jack the Ripper is the first book. Is that available from Amazon?
Yeah, Naming Jack the Ripper. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if anyone's interested in the story and more evidence, really, because you've just had an hour really to speak about it, then yeah. You used to do walks then. Do you do them anymore?
Yeah.
Or
we're going to be I'm doing a very big one very shortly. But yeah, we'll be picking them up again once the book's released. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, because I think it'd be nice to get some paranormal people together and do that, especially people with mediumship skills.
Yeah.
Just to see what you can sort of pick up. So yeah, it's certainly something to think about. It's from Amazon.
Let me know.
Well, yeah, it's certainly got me thinking. Yeah, definitely. So if anybody wants to do a road trip to London, we'll have to sort something out on that because
yeah, me 200 miles away at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how far I am from London, but yeah, sort of, yeah. But yeah, thanks for this. It's been interesting, and yeah, when you did the talk at the Paracon, it was amazing, and we're all actually honoured to see the actual show.
Thank you.
We really were, but yeah. But yeah, thank you so much anyway.
Pleasure.
And just wish you luck for the future, and can't wait to see the next book.
Well,
yeah, I did check, and I think there are 13 copies on Amazon yesterday. So, and then they're going to bring some more out. But yeah, thank you so much, and and thanks everyone for watching. Left you all thinking. But the book's available from Amazon. Look after yourselves. Sharon, take care, please, and sending healing to you and healing to anyone who needs it, all right? Okay, so thank you. Thanks for all the questions and everything. Goodbye. Thanks, Anne. Bye, everyone. See you.